Hey folks, Max here, and I promise that after over 2 years of teasing, the history of cruising video will be my next video. But it won't be this video. Although if you're new here, I make videos on the intersection of sex, LGBTQ life, kink, and politics. If you like these kinds of videos, consider subscribing. Recently, I had the interesting opportunity to take part in local gay cinema, where I was privileged to watch the entirety of Wakefield Poole's Boys in the Sand. It got me thinking about the video I had done on the history of porn, where I had briefly mentioned that Boys in the Sand was the first commercial porn film with a plot predating that of Deep Throat, which is often cited as the first. Fucking straights.
It's true, but he shouldn't say it.
However, that doesn't do Boys in the Sand the justice that it deserves. It is a masterpiece, delving into the lives of cruisers everywhere, blurring the lines of obscenity and art. But what is obscenity? Also, what is art? Let's agree on a definition real quick. This isn't the first time that we've talked about obscenity in media, nor will it be the last time. Art and obscenity are linked, and have been since the beginning of art, as art is anything that falls under creative expression with the ability to evoke emotion. Now, this is my summation of various definitions of art, but that's just it. There are many definitions of art, but the definitions of obscenity are relatively narrow. In the US, we can refer to Miller v. California, whose definition of obscenity is as follows. The basic guidelines for the trier of fact must be A. Whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work, taken as a whole, appeals to the Puritan interest. B. Whether the work depicts or describes in patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law. And C. Whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Though for those in Turf Island, I mean the UK, the Obscene Publications Act vaguely defines obscenity as material that is likely to deprave and corrupt. And in Canada, it's a similar notion in their criminal code under their offenses tending to the corruption of morals. Section 163.8 defines obscene materials as the following. Any publication, a dominant characteristic of which is the undue exploitation of sex, or of sex in any one or more of the following subjects, namely crime, horror, cruelty, and violence, shall be deemed to be obscene. That rhymes. And I really could go on, country after country detailing their obscenity laws, but we see the patterns. Corruption, depravity, lacking value, etc. I'm going to be analyzing the US definition, particularly as the politics of America would be the greatest direct influence to Poole and his contemporaries. But I invite you to share your country's definition of obscenity in the comments below. Now, of course, I can't show you anything obscene here. YouTube would... Yeah, something like that, or worse. But if I need to illustrate something, I will draw it poorly in MS Paint. Andy. The feature starts with Andy. In an interview, Poole said that he wanted this to sound like a solo jerk-off film, and then suddenly this art film came on for 10 minutes. It's a love letter to Andy Warhol, as well as a film that Poole originally gave to Warhol for his birthday. He had fallen in love with Warhol's work the first time he had laid eyes on it, and the short starts out attempting to capture that elevated feeling he experienced when the elevator doors first opened, before escalating into softcore Takashi Miike imagery.
Miike? Who's that?
For reals? You don't know Miike? He's like a film super director from Japan.
Or, as my moo put it, something about I'm feeling like I'm having a mental episode during it. The imagery comes at you as fast as you can process it, consuming piece after piece in a way that has you wanting more. Then, as fast as it comes, it goes. I'm a Warhol fan, so I was familiar with most of these pieces, but I can only imagine if you came here to whack it with no knowledge of pop art. Though, being a Warhol fan, I think that it's particularly interesting that Poole decided to feature Andy first, front and center, as the art world's reception of Warhol's pieces and Poole's Boys in the Sand would be quite similar. Today, pop art has greater mainstream appeal where many have heard or seen works by Andy Warhol or Roy Lichtenstein. But at the time, like many new art movements of their respective times, pop art was widely criticized by the art world. After all, pop art in particular was a middle finger in the face of the stuffy, elitist art world, mocking classical art methods and seeking to disrupt the status quo of art at the time. Quite like the anti-art of decades previous, like Duchamp's Fountain, though people still hate that guy. Because of its negative reception, one could say that Warhol's work, and we're not even just talking about Blue Movie here, lacks artistic value. And if his work lacks artistic value, then by definition, it is obscene. But I digress. Andy's use of erratic imagery, the ramping of the music, getting your blood pumping until it takes its foot off the pedal, effectively mentally edges you into the main picture. Boys in the Sand. Talking about the main feature, the meat and potatoes of the film are these vignettes that feature multiple cruising profiles. But Max, what's a cruising profile? Well, it's not just your scruff profile, it's a term I'm coining to describe the motivations and modes of cruisers. For example, Wakefield Poole himself cruised the continental baths, looking for group sex, which is actually how he met the actor Peter Frisk in this first scene, who was his lover at the time. The cruising profile featured in this first scene is that of the outdoor cruiser. Filmed on Fire Island's very own beaches, this is the self-titled Boys in the Sand short, which, let's be real, they put down a blanket, so how in the sand were they? This scene was going to be the whole of the picture until one of his friends encouraged him to do more, and I can see why. There are no words throughout the whole film, just like in some instances of cruising there are no or few words exchanged, but the plot is very clear. We fade in with the uncertainty and societally imposed shame of the gay nude beach. Those who know these beaches are far off the beaten path, away from prying eyes or even the straight nude beaches. One may traverse rocks, waves, and other rough terrain just to have a cute nude kiki on the ocean. I, for one, have done many things to get in and out of gay nude beaches, including almost dying trying to scale a mountain because I wanted to get my dick sucked at Mr. S. Lever, but I digress. This is a tender joining of two people who were once strangers, but engage in an exchange that makes them more than that. Peter is relaxing on the beach, unsure of what he'll find until it literally pops up in front of him. I really do mean literally. There are men apparating in and out of existence in this movie. Which, while hilarious, is also a great way to call attention to the transient nature of cruising. You may go to a cruising spot 10 times and have 10 different experiences. Especially before the advent of the internet, you could be waiting for hours in a truck stop bathroom and not a single soul, could interact with you. Albeit, even in a crowded room where you're looking across the dance floor and your eyes meet with this beautiful stranger. Where were they before that? They had no bearing on your world before this very moment, and now they could be a fun lay, or in a great conversationalist at brunch tomorrow, a funny story to tell your friends later, or any number of negative and or positive things. What Peter and Casey are doing here is no different. Their play in this scene is gentle, soft, sweet, and passionate. Revisiting the exchange of cruising, exchange is quite literal here. Casey removes the cock ring from Peter's wrist and delicately wraps it around the base of Peter's hot dog. And once it's all said and done, Peter gifts him not only the hot dog ring, but all personal effects that he brought with him as he runs back into the ocean where he first spotted Casey. This ending shows the cyclical element of cruising, but I'll table that discussion because, as you will see, all the vignettes have that cyclical element. Poolside. The next vignette, Poolside, has an interesting and realistic beginning considering the rest of the content of the scene, wherein Casey is sitting by the pool reading the newspaper and the front page is talking about how a gay bar was raided. There are a lot of themes that one can pick up in this scene. It's rooting us back in reality, acknowledging the implicit link between cruising and illegality. As this film was shown in theaters to straight people that were not there to have sex, it educates straight people about the plight of the gay community. And perhaps most importantly, for this scene, it helps to solidify the cruising profile of our subject. He is an affluent young man with a private, secluded residence. Casey spends no time mulling over the article, but no doubt it plagues the back of his mind. It's why he's not out in the sand or at the Eagle. It's why he's pursuing the personal ads. He can contact and leisurely wait any amount of time for a man to arrive on his doorstep. Think snail mail grinder, but perhaps even more discreet than that, since all he has to do is call a number, and no one will even know that he called except him and the person on the other line. When he does get his package, and I literally mean package, he takes it from the post office and runs back home in a rush. Inside the package is what appears to be a tablet, which he tosses into the pool for a huge hunky dude to come out. Think one of those toys you would get from various novelty stores where they grow in water, but this one really grows in water. Their encounter is a far rougher flipping scene, but afterwards they're shown horsing around, like friends or perhaps lovers. Did you catch the cyclical element here? If not, we have one more and then I'll explain. Morning with Tommy Moore. The third and final vignette is titled Morning with Tommy Moore. Considering that the state of black men in mainstream porn is still quite abysmal,
Yeah, if you like white people.
I was surprised to see a black man in the movie. When asked about the film, Poole proudly states,
I just said, someone ought to be able to make a porno film that is attractive and that no one's degraded in, and I just decided to do it.
My first takeaway from the scene, ignoring the jungle drums, was appreciating that he was shot no different from his white counterparts. It doesn't feel like BBC Top destroys pretty petite pink snow bunny hole! Albeit, I would be remiss not to point out that he's the only worker in the film, which may be some unconscious bias. That and the Donkey Kong country-ass soundtrack. This scene focuses on the fantasy of cruising. A fun thing for some about this type of anonymous or otherwise no-strings-attached play is that the other person could be anything. Anyone, and we could do any number of things. Casey continuously lives multiple fantasies after a failed cruising experience. I use the quotes not only because of the ending of this scene, but also failure is subjective in this case. Did you two have sex? No, but there was the look, perhaps a mutual attraction and a desire for more. However, in life, we do not always have time for more. Sometimes we look, we acknowledge each other, and that is simply that. Tommy Moore, like I said before, is the only worker in the film. He assumedly has stuff to do that isn't plow twink hole or sit on twink pole.
Hey, I am a twunk, alright? That is a combination twink and hunk.
But Casey is having another lazy morning on Fire Island. So he can think about how rough or tender Tommy would be, how he would feel, what rooms they would play in, and more. The scene ends with Tommy, most likely there in the flesh, in the same position that he was in when the fantasy started. Then Casey closes the door and the real fun begins off-screen. The cyclical nature of cruising.
Round and round, let the city turn. Party in the hills, we can party in the burbs. Roof on fire, let it burn. Champagne in my hand, I'm not concerned.
Now, because you've been so patient, I'll describe the cyclical nature of cruising. This piece focuses on timing loops in cruising. Men appear out of thin air, literally in this case. We do our thing, and then men go, sometimes with you. Every encounter in cruising is different, as these vignettes illustrate. There are different profiles at play, different meetings, and different outcomes. However, our overarching themes remain the same. In that first vignette, Casey starts in the water, and Peter is on the beach. Then at the end, Peter goes in the water, and Casey is on the beach. In the second, it's the time spent waiting for the ad's claims to come to fruition. While in the last, the loops come and go with each fantasy. Though the cyclical nature of cruising is more than just a timing of encounters. Everything is a circle. Cruising areas themselves, but especially bars, tend to have a loop-like structure, where some people post up and others walk the loop, looking at those who are looking at them. Though, this is for my next video, the history of gay cruising. If that sort of thing interests you, consider subscribing, so you can watch it the moment it comes out. I digress. To return to the feature, it is truly emblematic of the porno chic era. It is extremely artful while not shying away from sex, even non-simulated sex like in this film. I wish I had the ability to watch a Blue movie because while I can't find anything from Poole talking about the film, it's likely that he knew about it due to his fascination with Andy Warhol, and I imagine parallels could be drawn from these two pieces. Perhaps in the future, if I can find Blue movie, or if one of you knows where I can watch it, I'll make another video comparing the two. Obscenity. I'll know it when I see it. Though works like this film can draw the ire of prudes and progressives alike, while progressive isn't synonymous with sex positive, I'm even talking about the sex positive ones. For example, one of the presenters for this film, who was talking before they started running the picture, said something to the effect of, "This isn't some seedy gay porno." And even in that biographical film that I've been referencing on Wakefield Poole's life, several of his friends also highlight a difference between dirty movies and this film. One person even says this removes the shame of the sexual act. They all mean to compliment the film, but in doing this, they bash porn as a genre, something that Poole himself likely would have had taken issue with.
I'm proud that I make fuck movies.
We touched on the legal definition of obscenity earlier, but did you know there were also obscenity tests? One such famous one comes from the I don't know this other guy's name. One such famous one comes from the Jacobellis versus Ohio case concerning the film The Lovers, where Justice Stewart claimed that the First Amendment protected all except hardcore pornography. When prompted for further definition, he simply said, "I know it when I see it." Justice Stewart's opinion in this case may seem more subjective or vague, but both definitions suffer in these categories. If art makes you horny, is it not art? As I said before in my definition of art, its purpose is to evoke emotion. Last time I checked, horny is an emotion, and it's one of my favorites, next to hungry. The distinction of the absolute, pure, obscenity-free art that is aspired to by the legal system is a fleeting shot in the dark. A definition of art defined by those without critical artistic thought. A roundabout way to police how people consume and interact with art. Which reminds me of something another presenter said. Some dicks are funny dicks. If you're the only one laughing, you're the dick. He was also anti-shitposting and pro-shit-talking, to which I have to say, that's not what shitposting means. But I'm also talking during this post, so I think that's alright. What preceded this quote was a story about a bachelorette party. Allegedly, they came to a showing of another movie they were presenting and laughed during some of the sex scenes. He did not want this to happen again, but the way in which he innervated the crowd of almost entirely men after the story felt that he was railing against the women in a way that did not sit right with me then, nor does it sit right with me now. Trust me, as a former gay event host, I'm no stranger to bachelorette parties. I understand wanting to cultivate an environment free of distraction or disruptive behavior, but there are different ways to phrase that. After all, it seemed like he was describing nervous laughter as opposed to something like,
Lord, I'm having a heart attack. Damn, this is some scary shit. Oh, I am scared.
albeit I'm not of the opinion that there is a wrong way to interact with media. Even Brenda's reactions to the film recontextualize the movie she's watching. She, for whatever reason, thinks that Shakespeare in Love is scary, despite it's clearly a rom-com.
Yes, and you call them
Scary shit.
despite the fact they are obviously
Rom-com. And while she has this interaction with the film, is she annoying? Yeah, she's annoying quite like many art takes can be annoying, and like many art takes, people will disagree or perhaps even kill you for them. Sure, these women in the presenter's story laughed during a sex scene. But that's not the end of the piece of art you're viewing, it's the beginning of a conversation. Considering that we were all raised in a puritanical society, there are going to be some pain points for those viewing sexual situations, especially in a small theater packed with people. Now, we can be introspective. Why did you laugh? What was funny? If it wasn't funny, but you laughed, how did that make you feel? Of course, we can't have this conversation during the movie, but it could be a learning moment with important takeaways. Or it could simply be a laugh, and nothing more. I'm reminded of watching Resident Evil Afterlife for the first time in theaters. It came out when 3D was still quite popular, and I opted to watch it in that format. There is this intense battle scene where Mila Jovovich is fighting a bunch of Zambambos. Actually, they're infected with a virus, so they're technically not zombies. I know! The big action money shot of this scene is where Mila Jovovich points her gun at a zombie in the foreground of the shot and fires. Subsequently, a bunch of coins spill out of the bullet holes in the zombie's head. The coins fly towards you and pass through you due to the miracle of 3D technology. And at that point, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I released a gut-busting laughter in an otherwise silent, except for a perfect circle playing, theater. Was I wrong to laugh at Mila Jojovich's bizarre adventure? Was I disruptive and did I need to be given a stern talking to? No, I was a guy enjoying a movie series that is often quite silly.
Come on!
That was inspired by a summarily funny video game series.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
As I described to you, Boys in the Sand is also quite silly. Unfortunately, I believe this presenter's preamble changed how the audience reacted to the funny parts of the film. I know it affected how I enjoyed the movie, but even at the first funny scene, no one really laughed. Then, in Poolside, we got some quiet, nervous laughter before getting regular laughs afterwards. It was like we, as an audience, needed permission to engage with the media, even though engaging with formative gay cinema was the purpose of this evening. This presenter likely wasn't intentionally trying to rob us as an audience of our agency, but unknowingly or not, our viewing experience was altered. Although the governing bodies of our society strike at media with the intention of not only removing autonomy from viewing art, but entirely removing the ability to interact with the art, in hopes that the isolation and deplatforming of the piece would make the piece effectively disappear. In a way, they're right. This narrow definition of obscenity is scary and it even stopped Wakefield Poole from breaking out into straight porn after Boys in the Sand. But it is important to remember as an artist, and as the audience, we have the ability to be free of this definition mentally. And as the tides are still raging over obscenity over 50 years later from the advent of this film, we have the ability to share this insight in hopes for a future free of obscenity. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring bell. As always, my links are in the description. I hope you have a great rest of your day or whenever you're watching this. Okay, bye!